You know you want me. I know I want you.
Hello, humans. Welcome to the Harmony and Humanity podcast, where we're all about highlighting the common ground we all share. We're inspiring conversations that lead to real world harmony and understanding. I am Amethyst Herrick, and I'm here with Dr. Lino Martinez. Hi, Lino.
Hello, I love being back. I love this. Thank you. Hello,
Yeah.
everyone.
And the lovely and talented Jasmine Vine. Hi, Jasmine.
Why, hello.
We are three transgender humans, all three of us, combining science, spirituality, and lived experience, all with the purpose of showing that we have much more in common than what separates us. So, in today's live stream, we're talking about transmedicalism in particular, but also, there's a lot of hate just going around these days, and so we wanted to prove to all of you that you're all valid. So we're all going to ask each other loads of questions because it's what we do. But if you're joining us live, please, we want this to be interactive. So drop some comments in the chat there. And if you're watching this like on playback, then drop some comments there just to tell us how you thought about it. So what you thought about it. So, all right, let's get into this topic here. First of all, do we want to talk about what transmedicalism is, or do we want to talk about the just all the hate and whatever's going around today? What do you think?
I'm like,
So we've had a flurry of
I
four
do
executive
want to
orders,
talk about
right?
it a little bit,
go.
Go.
just
Yeah, go ahead.
because I've noticed something interesting, just seeing the frequency and how much this crap is coming out, is I've shut off a little bit. And I'm concerned that that's perhaps the intention of it, is to overwhelm and get people to the point where it's like, oh yeah, like whatever, there's another executive order, meh, and not pay as much attention to it.
Yeah.
Because I'm noticing that's what's happening within my brain, as I'm going, oh, whatever at this point. But if everyone did that, then is it possible that things will slip by without being noticed? I don't know.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I'm also wondering, though, I mean, because I feel like I've kind of done the same thing, but also I've gotten, super busy with work and stuff. But also, Amethyst, you were pretty sick with the flu, and I saw some of your posts, where maybe you were wondering if maybe just getting super involved with, the politics and what was going on with your friends here in the United States, that maybe that could possibly lower your immune system. And I believe that it can, and I'm
Oh.
pretty sure that it can. And so also, I mean, maybe I'm feeling that definitely there could be a chance that maybe it's some type of agenda to get us to quiet down, but also you're listening to your body, and that's one of the most important things you could do. Sometimes you really need to give it a break. It's so that you can heal.
I think it's a good point.
That's why you had a flu too recently?
No, I didn't. I think he meant you, Jasmine, not me.
Oh,
Did I say amethysta?
You did, but that's
you
fine.
did, yeah.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
You're all good.
So, but
Yeah,
oh, go ahead. What were you gonna say, Jasmine?
No, just noises of agreeance.
There was a sociologist who put something out recently. Jennifer Walter is her name. She's not She-Hulk. If you like She-Hulk at all, Jennifer Walters. She's not Jennifer Walters. Only one Walter. But she put something out recently that said that this is corresponds to. I'm trying to remember the other sociologist. I'm not going to come up with her name, Naomi something, but it had to do with shock culture. That was the that's what she thought this administration was going for, is something so that we do just shut down and go, oh, forget about it. Like, no way can we even handle this, because there's just so much. And Jasmine, I think to your point, that's exactly what shock culture is, that we start trying to handle everything, and then we can't because it's just too much. And when you have 200 of those executive orders, because I think that's about
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
many have come out in 2 weeks at this point. I don't know if anything came out today, but wouldn't surprise me if that were true. yeah, you just can't look at every single one. And so something
And I think
slips
it
past us.
divides people at a rapid rate as well,
Yeah,
because there's stuff around immigration, and then there's all the trans and anti-LGBTQIA stuff, and
right.
then there's like all these other subsections that are being divided. And somebody mentioned to me the other day, I don't remember who it was, but if we're divided and all focusing on our own battles, we're not united in a single cause,
Right, right.
which dilutes the power of our voices, which is very interesting
Yeah. No, I agree. I
because we
think that's
can't all
totally
focus
true.
on everything at the same time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very
Hmm.
true. Very, very true.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's interesting times we live in. So much of me just wants to move to Australia. Maybe I can. Do you have a spare room still, Jasmine?
No, I don't have a spare room, but you know what? I feel like this is going to become a house just with 10 trans people here, just safekeeping.
Right, right. No,
Oh, jeez.
it's getting ridiculous. I think it's getting ridiculous. So,
Yeah.
but that, I mean, to go back to our point, or I mean the topic. I mean, I think much of what this does, because we're all sort of in this survival mode. I think this has got a lot of, especially the transgender community, just going, I don't even exist anymore. Like, am I even still a
Mm.
person? You know, there's, I know I've seen that online. I've seen people on TikTok just going, yeah, we're not even real anymore. And so I think that's a,
Which is
what's that? Which what?
which is BS.
Well, it is, but jeez, I mean,
According to according to the president, we don't exist, but yeah.
What I
but it,
found interesting was I came across on social media. They were showing that I guess the day before there was orders by President Dump that there were what Toronto Dump that
Oh
Caitlyn
my
Jenner
god.
was like a full on supporter. I mean, like cheering him on, and then the next day he made all these rules for trans. I'm like,
Mm.
wait, hang on a minute. Is Caitlyn Jenner still on board? Does
right.
Caitlyn Jenner want to be called
Yeah.
Bruce now?
I
Is
know.
she okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
Last
about
I
Blair
saw, she
White?
was still cheering.
Yeah.
yeah.
Wait, repeat
What's
that,
that? What
Jasmine.
did you
We were,
say?
yeah, talked over you.
I said the last I saw, Caitlin was still cheering. So
Yeah, I don't understand, but
God knows
Mm-mm.
why. But perhaps it's because, like, financially, she's at an
sure.
advantage. Where she's not as
Yeah,
impacted by those things. So perhaps
right.
she feels immune to it.
Right, right. I can
Hmm.
completely imagine. Because I mean, a little part of me does the same. Where I'm like, listen, I've been like, I'm all done, right? I mean, I don't have any more transition to do. Do I really care? You know, if somebody's going to say, well, sex now means this, and I'm like, well, my birth certificate's done, my social security is done, everything is done. Why do I? But I am impacted because I'm part of a community, right? It's not just me
Yeah.
who's being affected here. It's certainly our entire community. And so, anyway, I think all of us have this, shock culture, right? We go, what the hell?
Mm.
So, well, do we want to try out? Do you want to talk about transmedicalism? Because I
Sure. Let's define. Let's start
think,
by defining it. Let's go from
yeah.
there.
All right, let me pull it up. Hang on,
Yeah.
I've got this on here. Where'd it go?
I've got it here already.
Oh, do you?
It's
Do
like
it.
the absolute core of transmedicalism is the belief that gender dysphoria is a requirement for a person to be transgender, and that it is a condition that can be treated with medical intervention. That's the core of it. However, I think a lot of people take it further than that and say, if you don't want any sort of medical or surgical transition, then you're not trans, or,
Right.
you know, you're not trans if you don't want bottom surgery, for example.
Oh, I've even heard
Hmm.
if you have not gotten bottom surgery, you're not
Oh, there you
valid
go. Yeah.
yet. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I have some I have some trouble. First of all, I think we should probably also pull up what's the definition of gender dysphoria, because there's a
Yeah.
DSM version, but then I know that I take it slightly differently, like significantly differently. I
Oh, okay,
happen to
tell
have the
us.
DSM-5 here if you want to. I mean, not like I own the DSM-5. Who the hell? Lino, you probably do, but I don't.
I have the digital copy.
Oh, okay. Well, digital. I mean, like a Merck index that you have sitting on a
Yeah, it's
shelf.
thick. It's pretty thick.
So, all right, so I'm reading here DSM 5 criteria for gender dysphoria. So it starts off saying a marked incongruence between one's experienced slash expressed gender. Wow, say that 4 times. Experienced slash expressed. Let me try it again. A marked incongruence between one's experienced slash expressed gender and natal gender of at least 6 months in duration, as manifested by at least 2 of the following. So this is a condition, right? In the DSM, and back me up on this, Lino. In the
Yeah.
DSM, ultimately these are supposed to characterize dysfunction, but dysfunction means, I mean, they're saying 6 months, so dysfunction means that your life is impacted, that you cannot function completely well. Can you want to back
Right.
me up on that, Lino? Was that okay-ish or?
I mean, that's definitely what it says, and I feel the way that you feel because that doesn't pertain to every single. It's not a cookie cutter definition because we're not cookie cutter humans.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's absolutely faulty. And as we have discussed before off this podcast, that I also personally feel that it needs to be more recognized by endocrinology rather than DSM a mental. If you keep it as a mental disorder, then they're going to just keep it that way. The only benefit
Certainly.
about it being there, and that can absolutely still change and become a different ICD code, but just right now are the codes that do help us to get
Right.
medications or surgeries or
Right.
whatnot. But those codes can
Mm.
change out of the DSM and be put in a different type of billing code. So it kind of just keeps the transgender population as it being like a mental health issue, but it's not a
Yeah.
mental health issue because this mental health can't be treated by a psychiatrist. They can't say take a Cymbalta or take Prozac and all of a sudden you're going to feel congruent with what you were how you were born, so it's not that a psychiatrist can't help you. You actually have to seek a medical doctor for this
Yeah.
if you want to physically transgender, if you want to. And if you don't, perhaps maybe you just need to talk about it and identify yourself and really come into your own comfort level on how you want to identify. And even so, people's depression and their gender dysphoria goes away when they get that recognition. So there's definitely a misunderstanding all around, and I don't think it's going to be forever. I don't feel it's going to stay that way, and that's why we just need to be adamant, and we need to keep educating people who are not educated and not informed and not aware about this.
Right. Right. So, incidentally, now that I've asked that question, I did that ends with as manifested by at least 2 of the following. And it turns out there are 1, 2, 3, there are 6 following subconditions. And one of them is pretty straightforward. Marked incongruence between one's expressed gender and primary and or secondary sex characteristics. So this focuses almost completely on physicality, which I think we see a lot of in transmedicalism, is that you go, well, if you're not taking hormone therapy, or if you're not seeking surgery that's going to make you more feminine or masculine, then you're just not valid. But here's another one. A strong desire to be rid of one's primary and or secondary sex characteristics because of a marked incongruence. Or in adolescence, a desire to prevent the development of anticipated secondary sex characteristics. But that could really describe non-binary people. And there was another word. I'm going to forget it. People who want to get rid of all primary sex characteristics, primary and secondary. Do you two remember what this was?
No, I don't.
Okay. Forgive me, those of you out there listening. C is a strong desire for the primary and or secondary sex characteristics of the other gender. So this is all focusing on physicality. Now finally we're going to look at something else. D is a strong desire to be of the other gender, or some alternative gender different from one's designated gender. Of the other gender. Like, what does that mean? Because this goes into E, a strong desire to be treated as the other gender. Now, I've brought up the point that if you are a woman in technology, I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts. Do people still say that? That you want to be treated as the other gender. But here's another, a strong conviction that one has the typical feelings and reactions of the other gender. Does that mean if you're a tomboy? Does that mean if you like ballet and you're a little boy? So it's not, I don't think it's straightforward. But this is where, my microphone has been pointing away from me the whole time. This is where I'm curious, if we don't have a great description for gender dysphoria, that it remains, very much that the DSM definition is kind of, a little squishy. Doesn't describe most of us, some of us. You want me to mute you?
Oh my gosh, is that coming through?
Wow.
I muted. No.
You get that mic nice and wet there?
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to everyone listening. I put you on my microphone, but I didn't click it hard enough.
It's all right. It was endearing. Kind
of.
Oh my gosh.
Not that endearing, but
I feel like
I wish we had been focused on you actually when you've done that. If you want to do it again, now I've got you on focus.
Zoom right into that.
I'm fine. Oh dear.
So anyway, transmedicalism. So all of these things. So it's funny because everything in the DSM is designed to exclude people, right? Like you want to do that with a definition. It should be exclusive, exclusionary, whatever else it should take, because you don't want the definition to be something that you go, yeah, I don't know. Does that fit? I don't know, because that's a crap definition. But this seems to include pretty much every human experience to me. I mean, I want to go back to, strong convictions. The one has typical feelings and reactions of the other gender. Is this Marjorie Taylor Greene who likes guns?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Is this, strong desire to be treated as the other gender? Is that just sissy boy type people? Strong desire to be of the other gender? I mean, I don't know. It's not all physicality, but transmedicalism tends to focus there. All right, discuss.
They're definitely focusing more on the physicality rather than the feelings. So I was on a podcast last week, and the woman, Tina Irwin, who had interviewed me, was actually really fascinated and asked me the question, when I felt this way, when did I feel like I first felt like I was male? And I was like, maybe I was 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And this is really important for people to know, because the majority of the people think that we all of a sudden just one day said, hey, you know what? I want to be the other gender.
Yeah.
Just like I want new shoes, Hey, hold on a minute. No, I've felt like this, and people need to know that it's a feeling. It's not just, I want to change all of a sudden. It's a feeling that I've had since I was very young, and maybe I didn't have feelings towards it. Maybe I didn't have the option back then. Right. And so, I mean, for some people they do, depending on how you're brought up, and maybe generational as well. And maybe even if it's not generational, sometimes it takes people years to find themselves, just like it takes people years to find themselves in a career, right. So, I mean, it's so, and that's okay. And I mean, but for whatever reason, it is where it's at right now. And it's definitely a stepping stone to get us to where we need to be.
Yeah. Jasmine, how old were you?
I often talk about, like for me, I often talk about the fact that I didn't really make the decision to transition, which is kind of strange to think about. But I just followed what felt right to me. I aligned with what made me feel most comfortable and most happy, most self-assured. And eventually people started gendering me she, her based on my appearance. And I went, Oh, okay, well, that feels good too. Like, there was a point where I didn't go, oh, I'm a boy now and I would like to be a woman, and these are the steps that I want to take in order to do that. It literally just happened as a result of me being myself, that people started perceiving me as a woman. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I do align more with woman than man, that's for sure. Like, I never really defined it all that much. So it's really interesting that you mentioned that people often view it as this decision point when it didn't feel like a decision whatsoever.
You also started what, at 14? Is that right, Jasmine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's like, even in saying that, it's like, oh, would I like long hair? Yes. Who do I relate to the most online? Oh, it's these people with like really cool makeup and like cool different alternative styles and stuff. I loved that. And so it was just a process of relating to certain people more than others, which we do in a social environment.
Right.
And to me, that's essentially what gender is. We have subsets of people, subgroups that exhibit certain characteristics. Perhaps they have certain interests. They, think in certain ways or behave in certain ways. And we relate to one more than the other, typically. So for me, I related a lot more to femininity, and I leaned into that femininity where I felt most comfortable and happy. And eventually I started being perceived as a woman.
Yeah.
It's like, is that gender? I feel like that is essentially gender.
So you're using social norms really to describe gender, which, I mean, fits very well with
What else?
Judith Butler's social construct, of course, but
I mean, it's literally just how we relate to other groups of people. I think that is ultimately what people perceive as gender, is how we relate to other people.
yeah. I wasn't saying you were wrong, by the way. I'm just. I do, I'm curious though. So Lino, you knew very young. Jasmine, you knew very young. I also knew very young, 3 or 4 years old. But I actually want to throw this
I
out because
didn't know that young, by the way.
Wait, say again?
I didn't know that young, by the way. I like I said, it was like the gradual process. I kind of knew when I was 14, but prior to that, I was always really feminine. But I didn't say, "Oh, I must be a girl instead of a boy." There weren't those lines for me.
Sure. Well, and Lino, I don't know if I'm going to describe your experience as well, because my experience was not like I didn't make some conscious decision either. It's not like I went, oh well, and so now that makes me transgender in 1974. I'm not even
Right.
sure how much the word was in use. What I did ultimately was I just assumed I was like my sisters. And I think that's sort of saying the same thing you are, Jasmine, is that sooner or later I ended up getting Zoe, by the way, thank you. I'm looking at your comments. Zoe's saying she didn't figure out until she was 21. And I want to get to that because that was where I was going to go. But
Sure.
yeah, I don't think it was like a figuring out. I think sooner or later enough people said, hey, no, you're wrong. Don't do this. This isn't right.
Exactly. You're right on.
Okay. So I mean, it's like I knew who I was, and it just didn't
Right.
seem wrong until other people said,
To me,
nope.
that's social corrections.
Oh, it is
Like
totally.
we've
But that's,
spoken about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that's why
I mean,
Oh,
I
go
guess
ahead.
absolutely the same goes for me. But I was naturally, as a little kid, 4 or 5 years old, naturally wanting to wear my brother's clothes and constantly by my mother take that off, putting bows
Sure.
in my hair, putting dresses on me, constantly pushing me to be the most feminine little girl.
Right.
And so when you're constantly pushed like that, it becomes a big deal when you decide to really fully embrace who you are. And so for me, I had to make it had to be a choice because I didn't have that liberty growing up whatsoever.
Right.
And
Right.
so and it took me years. I mean, years and years to be in that comfort because of fear of losing a relationship with my family.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so
So I
I think
really
that's a big thing.
let's
So go
finish up,
ahead.
Jasmine. Nope, finish up.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that's a big thing that stops people from recognizing it until they're older, is because if the family environment, the people that you rely on the most for protection, for love and compassion, all of that,
exactly.
if they don't accept it, then it really stops you from accepting it because you
Yeah.
need to be accepted by that herd in order to be
Oh,
safe.
right. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think it differed for me a little bit, was those lines weren't really strong for me
Exactly.
because I wasn't told by my family that it's wrong to, use that bloody scarf as a skirt. Like, that's wrong. They were just like, oh, that's a kid playing, whatever.
Sure.
The only place where it was wrong was at school and being bullied at school.
Sure.
But that was like a degree of separation. I think if it was my family as well, I would have had a much harder time.
Absolutely, you would have.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I don't disagree. I mean, and I think this is why ultimately my theory of gender has more to do with the negotiation that you have to do with for safety within your social environment. Because that's what I think I lacked. I mean, in a lot of ways. We don't have to talk about my childhood. I'd rather not. But in my social environment, I didn't feel a lot of safety to express who I was. And that didn't even just have to do with gender. I think that also had to do with a lot of identity. So I think that's a ton, when I think of gender, I don't think of it as distinct from the rest of identity because it's part of who you are. It's part of who you know you are already. But I want to go back, hang on, because Zoe actually I love the way that Zoe put this too. Didn't figure it out until she was 21. So I'm quoting here. For me, it was a case of finding out being trans might be a possibility. Excuse me. Great, so now
Do I need to mute here?
You've blown your nose. Lino and I just cleared our throats. So here's the thing. So I'm curious. Does this, so figuring out until you were 21, I didn't transition until I was 52. Does it make a difference? Does that make Zoe less valid? Does that make me less valid up until 51.999? What does that mean? Whoa, let's talk. What do you think?
No, it doesn't make any decision that you make any time in life doesn't make you any less valid.
Agreed.
Ever.
And what I would contend, and Zoe, I'm putting words in your mouth. Forgive me. But maybe it'll be right. Possibility is somewhat of a possibility is somewhat code for safety. You said having nothing to lose when I decided to dive in and see if it felt right. Agreed. I think at some point when you say, oh, I got nothing to lose, you've discovered a sense of safety or whatever. I'm trying to, I don't know if that works. Zoe, maybe you can let me know. But what did you say, Jasmine? What did you say though, Jasmine? I talked over you for a moment.
Jasmine froze. I think Jasmine froze.
Did.
Yeah.
All right. Well, she'll be back.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Wait, you moved for a moment. We'll see. There we go. We got a thumbs up.
Jasmine's coming back. Oh, you'd froze for a minute.
Oh, damn. Sorry.
So what did you say, though? I had said maybe this was a case of finding safety. What was it you said right after that?
Oh, I said or desperation. It's like if there's nothing else to lose, you're like, oh, whatever. I might as well do this.
Yeah. Safety goes right out the window. So, but I think what that says is that there is no condition that makes you transgender.
Right.
Right. I mean,
Which is why I'm really annoyed at transgenderism. Like, get that out. Get that out. Get that out.
Right. Because I mean, I can bring up. What did I say? What was I saying? So treated as the other gender. Like I said, I think most women in technology would go, yeah, I wish I was treated like a man here. Is that enough? Typical, strong conviction. You have the typical feelings and reactions of the other gender. I mean, gosh, that encompasses so much. So Zoe says it was survival more than anything. Yeah, I'm sure. At some point, safety, you can just throw that right out the window. You were either going to transition or die. And I think that's what most of us end up feeling.
I would really like to talk more around the perceived origins of that from the outside world.
Yeah.
Because I hear so often, and Lino, you're saying before, it's in the DSM-5, it's considered a mental disorder, basically. I'm someone who really struggles when someone comes to me with that sort of rhetoric, because when I'm presented with some sort of issue, like a mental issue or whatever, I always try to get to the root cause of it. I'm someone who really loves to get to the root cause and go, okay, these are the symptoms we're seeing, but what is actually at the root of those symptoms? Yeah. Because I think often people mistake a description for an explanation.
Right.
Yes.
And they go, oh, these cluster of symptoms means that I am, bipolar, and that means that for the rest of my life, I'm going to struggle with this, this, and this. Like, they use it as an explanation to explain the rest of their lives, basically. Whereas I always like to dissect that a little bit and go, just because you've got a cluster of these things that fall under this category in this particular book doesn't really mean all that much. And you can still affect those things by looking at what is actually the root of that. And so when people come to me with a similar idea, and instead of, bipolar or whatever, they're replacing it with transgender, I struggle a little bit, because I'm like, we don't fully understand the origins of gender identity. We've got ideas, like we talk about them heavily and what we think it is, but we don't 100% know. And that makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable, because people say, well, shouldn't you try something else before you go and lop off your sheesticles? Like, shouldn't you try this, that, or the other? And I agree with what they're saying, to the point that, yes, I do think you should look into other ways of solving things before you resort to surgery, of course. Of course you should.
Sure.
But I don't know. Do you get what I'm getting at here?
Well, what were the first 14 years of your life? Was that not trying something else? I mean, however, because you only got the sheesticles lopped off, I suppose, more recently. But yeah, what the hell did I do for 52 years? Was that not trying something else? I mean, it kind of was. I don't think we have a choice. Everything that we do is a trial. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But what is, because people will question, what is the root cause of that? And that's where this organophilia crap comes from. They're like, oh, is it this, or is it this, or is it this? And people try to put it into some sort of box that they understand. And for me, I'm like, good luck. It's in a box that I don't fully understand. I know it's not organophilia. I'm not even attracted to women, let alone attracted to myself physically.
Right.
So there's all these explanations that people try to put on to explain transgender. Like, maybe it's past trauma, and, maybe it comes from, sexual assault in childhood or whatever. And I'm like, wasn't sexually assaulted in childhood. Past trauma, yeah, I guess I've had a bunch of past trauma, but there's plenty of trans people that don't have any fucking trauma in their childhood, and they're fine.
Right.
So it's not directly related to trauma. It's not directly related to any other mental illnesses, be it depression, anxiety, or anything else. There's trans people that are completely mentally healthy, have never experienced depression in their lives. So those arguments don't fit in with, I guess, my perception of reality. But I also can't say that it's not a thing entirely. I don't know. It could be different origins for different people, for all I know.
It is different origins for different people. Hmm.
Hmm.
Again, it's not cookie cutter. It'll never be cookie
Yeah.
cutter, and that's
Right.
actually a beautiful thing.
Oh, that's my
Hmm.
opinion too. Yeah. But I mean, I think that's
Because I just
identity.
don't know how to approach that kind of stuff. Because, like, the baseline, this is what I always will say to people if they come to me like, oh, the reality and the blah blah blah, you're denying reality. I'm like, the reality is we don't 100% know where it comes from, but we know that transition is the most reliable source of finding happiness and helping those people feel better. It's the
Yeah.
most reliable treatment.
Hmm.
So unless, and we've tried conversion therapy, we've tried that, and it's still being tried today. It doesn't work.
It'll
We
never
know
work.
that it doesn't
No.
work. So it's like these people are arguing for conversion therapy essentially, which we know doesn't work. So it's a, I don't know. I don't know how to approach that.
What's fascinating though is that I think it happens even in our community. Because I mean, isn't that what transmedicalism is?
Yeah.
You go, well, here's why you are transgender. It's a focus on why as opposed to how or what.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I wanted to use how or what. I'm saying how because I think of gender as a process as opposed to a destination. But
Yeah.
I think there's so much of Western medicine that just goes, oh yeah, well this is why such and such. Everything turns into a label, and this is why I have thought of Western medicine as doing nothing more than pathologizing a normal human experience.
Hmm.
If you have 2 weeks of depression and then you snap out of it, technically you've satisfied the DSM criteria for clinical depression. You should be treated for a mental disorder. But depression's not a bad thing necessarily. It's considered an evolutionary advantage. But now it's a mental disorder? Anxiety was an evolutionary advantage. Dissociation. So anyway, I think I've said this about a bajillion times, but we pathologize normal human experiences only for the sake of being able to stick a label on it.
But
And
in regards
You know
to
what?
bringing up like depression or anxiety, it has gotten worse with time, and that all
Yeah.
that has to do with the overpopulation of the planet. It has to do with a lot more stimulus going on
oh,
than there
sure.
used to be before,
Yeah.
when you were just had to worry about being a farmer. So I mean, some things have really, I guess you could say, put our central nervous system on overload,
Yeah.
not a natural human way to be. And
Yeah.
so some of these mental disorders, they've become disorderly, meaning that they have come out of the order of being a calm, happy, organized feeling as a human.
Sure.
And if you think about it, it's pretty rare these days to feel that way
Mm.
because of everything going on. We're overstimulated.
For sure.
And so that's what makes it a disorder. It's not in the order that we're
Yeah.
used to it being. Now, do I believe everybody needs to be medicated? No, absolutely not. I think what people need to be is more educated and be more aware of things that we can do. But the one thing, as far as like depression, for instance, if someone is depressed and they've been in that depression for up to 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden they're not. Now, if they're all of a sudden not, they're not depressed anymore. But if they go 2 weeks and then more, that can start to really impact someone's life and start to lead to suicidal
Mm.
ideation. And suicide has been more prominent and more prevalent these days than ever before. And so,
Yeah.
what do we do as a society to prevent these suicides and to prevent depression from getting worse? And that's when we need the help of a book such as the DSM to know how to treat somebody if somebody doesn't know how to treat somebody, and if they are meeting a certain
Mm.
criteria. But that's a reason why transgender doesn't fall into that.
Mm.
Because it's not like all of a sudden, they say, in your gender incongruence for 6 months, and then things are going to get worse. Well, what's going to get worse is I want to be myself more often. Is that the worst thing? If
Mm.
anything, that's a beautiful thing.
So
Yeah. Just
can I actually just read some of this?
Go ahead. Yeah,
Because here we
read it.
go. A prominent. This is depressive disorder. This one's particular substance or medication. So maybe I want to find a better one. But
Yeah.
so prominent and persistent disturbance in mood that predominates in the clinical picture and is characterized by depressed mood or markedly diminished interest or pleasure in all or almost all activities. Okay. I mean, because here's another one. The disturbance is not better. Oh no, sorry, that's something else. But so in any event, I mean, depressed mood. What is so I'm going to throw this out here. It's still context specific because I don't disagree with you, Lino. You know, the our lives have gotten much different, but for it to DSM says that a mental disorder implies dysfunction of daily life.
Yeah.
And so my depressed mood, maybe I can get way farther down than Jasmine, let's say. Let's say my son is exceptionally positive, and there are times when like bad things have happened and my son's just bouncing right back, and I'm like, I wish I could be this. I wish I could be that good. I wish I could be that. I don't want to use the word good. I wish I could be that positive. I guess all my point is to say is that, yes, the world's gotten more difficult, but it's still a person by person thing. Like, it's still really difficult to say,
it's extremely difficult because there's a lot of other things that people aren't looking at, such as other vitamin deficiencies. What are you eating? Are you healthy? Are you eating junk food? Are you sleeping enough? I mean, there's a lot of different things that fall into that category, and that's why it's really important, and it really depends on the clinician and I mean, just how aware they are to look at all different corners of a person's life to be able to get a proper diagnosis before you actually give them that diagnosis.
That is what drives me bonkers in like the Western medicine side of thing, is they often don't look at those aspects of what could be causing a depressed mood.
Yeah.
We look at it and go, you'd be surprised the amount of people, I'm pretty sure one person watching this has viewed it in this way. Oh, depression? I have depression. It's a chronic, lifelong thing. I'm always going to be depressed. And you know what? I'm just going to manage it throughout my life. I used to believe this. I used to believe I've always got depression and I'm just going to have to manage it throughout the rest of my life.
Yes. Yep.
Bullshit.
Yep.
Absolutely bullshit. That type of thinking, the pathologization, and especially viewing it as chronic and lifelong.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Managing symptoms, I think, is what I'd focus on there. Not necessarily that it's chronic and something lifelong, but that it's only you can only address it by managing symptoms. Typically, pharmaceutically, what the hell's the word I'm looking for?
Pharmacologically?
Pharmacotherapeutically?
Yeah.
Pharmaceutically.
Pharmacotherapeutically.
Oh my gosh.
Somewhere through in there. Do you see that little PhD after my name? That's what it came from. Pharmacotherapeutically. Yeah. But managing symptoms. That's what we do in the West. We don't go, are you healthy? No, we go, what symptoms do we have to manage for you? Oh, Zoe, you didn't have to say it.
Sorry, Zoe. Sorry. But I've seen that so much. People come to me all the time and, oh no, I can't help it. I'm depressed. I've been diagnosed with depression and that's my life. Right, no, it is not. You identify with a certain amount of symptoms right now that, say, in the DSM-5, it relates to a certain category. That's all it freaking means. 10 years' time, you might not relate to enough of those things in order to meet that category.
True.
It's literally just a categorization of symptoms. That's all it is.
So, but a lot of people do have the like black and white thinking or the black and white.
Yeah. Can I challenge you?
That instills is that people will see these symptoms that overlap with a ton of things and they'll go, oh, I have that symptom. That must mean that I'm ADHD. I have that symptom. That must
Sure.
mean that I'm autistic. I have that symptom. That must mean I've got OCD. And they'll identify with a ton of labels that may or may not actually match their experience because the symptoms individually overlap with a ton of different conditions.
Sure, sure. Can I
It drives
challenge
me
you?
bonkers. Please.
Can I challenge you for a second? Okay, here's my challenge. If somebody came to you and said, I identify as transgender. No, I mean, there you go. I mean, I think that was the end. That was the rest of my question.
That's the
You said,
challenge.
well, if I identify as OCD, whatever it was. I'm curious. I mean, that is much of what we're talking about being transgender. We identify as a gender other than what we were assigned as, in terms of sex at birth.
Oh. Okay.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to. I don't think my point here, and I didn't want to dump on you, and I'm actually, I'm looking at you going,
I
crap.
love it. I feel so challenged. I love it.
Because I think what we, because I don't disagree. I see people assuming labels and they go, well, I've got this label. And you even meet them. I mean, there's a podcast, I think, coming out this week, maybe, that I was on. I think it's this week. And the lady said, well, tell me about all these labels. Like, what's all the labels? And I was like, well, I'm going to tell you. I mean, I don't agree with the idea that we are only a set of labels. Whether that's OCD, ADHD, demisexual, catboy, it's a bajillions, right? Because there's a bajillion of them. But that's not who we are. And when we do, assume the identity of just labels, I think that's when we suffer. I can still say I identify as transgender, but I think that encompasses so much,
It does.
So I'm agreeing with what you're saying, just,
Yeah,
I used to have a big
really
issue
want
with
to
that word,
change myself
transgender.
further. Really?
Yeah,
For
why?
myself, I did, because my biggest issue for me personally was I didn't, as you were both talking about in the beginning, like I already knew I was mostly represented myself. I already knew that I had most dominant male energy. I didn't really transition my gender. I just transitioned the way that I looked physically to better match the way I feel.
Agreed.
So, but I have to adopt this word for people to understand, and people are still not understanding.
No.
Oh, that is why some people I've met identify with the term transsexual still, even though it's considered outdated by most people, because they're like, no, my gender has always been the gender that it is. I've transitioned my sexual characteristics to match with that. That's how people have described that to me in the past. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I also feel that the word, which that makes sense too, but putting the word sex in it will sexualize a lot of us, and that's why I'm not a fan of that word either. So.
And of course, there is a distinct definition for sex, and I'm not talking about executive order, whatever the hell it was. But by the way, let's say hi to Rich. Rich waved. Hi, Rich. Rich G.
Hello, Rich.
So, okay. So let's sum up a little bit. So it's 5:48. Well, my time.
Sum up. We've got another 2 hours yet, don't we?
Well, at least 2 hours. But let's make sure that we absolutely destroy transmedicalism. If you are, so here we go. Let me ask this question, both of you, and I'll ask you first, Lino. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, good. Are there invalid identities?
Are there invalid identities? No, nothing's invalid. I mean, everything exists for a reason, either because it was put out there and we received this information and we're processing it and we're constantly processing information. So nothing's invalid, because either way, it's still leading us towards our destiny, towards who we want to be, and it's making us question and making us become the best version of ourselves. So nothing's invalid.
All right, Jasmine, what do you think?
My brain is ticking over a whole bunch of things at the moment, so bear with.
Do you want me to go first?
The short answer is no. There is nothing invalid about the human experience. The human experience is very broad and very, very difficult to define. And we try our hardest to define it. But as I was talking with someone about the other day when they were trying to define their sexuality, they realized, oh, this label fits. Oh, so does this label. Oh, this label kind of fits too. And this one and this one and this one. We have, it's the cognitive side of our brain trying to define everything and make sense of things and try to put it into something we can understand consciously. But we exist on a plane that is higher than that. We can't define our own energy. It just is. And it's driven by how we feel and what we relate to.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. You sort of you took more or less what I was going to say. Not that you knew you were going to, but yeah, I think that what we look at is a difference. We only want to call something invalid because it doesn't fit into our definitions. But definitions are things that humans make. And if you have a human experience, then it must be valid because it's an experience humans had. So yeah, even if it doesn't fit into definitions, that doesn't mean that it's invalid. It just means that our definition is too small. And
a core portion of the scientific process is broadening or re-establishing definitions based on new information that we perceive.
Yes, right. It always blows my mind. Somebody goes, well, it doesn't fit into my definition. Okay, but see, as scientists, what you're supposed to do is go, this is terrible. This doesn't fit everything. We need to make it bigger.
Amethysta, I've got to call you out there. There's only XX and XY. I learned it in 9th grade biology, okay?
Understood. So Rich here.
We say more.
So Rich here asks a good question. Why is it we can define colors as in the millions, but so many people try to box into two genders? Rich, I have a whole lecture about how everything that we call that something has color, everything that we call possessing a color is inaccurate anyway. And so, like, if you said, well, I have a red sphere, I have a blue sphere. No, you have a sphere that actually reflects a particular wavelength of light that in most humans tends to excite certain rods and cones so that we perceive something that a physicist somewhere out there said should fall in this particular wavelength, range of wavelengths. Right. We don't even use colors correctly. Of course, we're not using sex and gender correctly.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that that they couldn't be defined, and it doesn't mean that common inaccurate usage makes it right. So take that,
what
Donald
it does
Trump.
do is provide certainty for people.
Yes.
And you know what? That's what I think Tronald Dump does really well.
Tronald?
Tronald Dump is he provides certainty for people, which is something that a great leader does. And I'm not calling him a great leader. He provides certainty for people by even saying, on the first day that I'm in, I'm going to do this, 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 and this, and to the point that it's just ridiculous and impossible. But it provides certainty for people who don't know any better.
Yeah.
Same thing with the sex and gender side of things. Oh my gosh, we're confused. We don't understand all these different terms and yada, yada. And then Trump comes along and goes, this uncertainty that you're feeling, that turns into fear, that turns into this prejudice and yada, yada. I'm going to define it for you and make it so that you are certain and correct. And therefore everyone's nervous system goes, Well,
many of us didn't have that sense of...
No. No, but the people who are uncertain about it and want that certainty, he just went, there you go. Here's a nice little pat for you.
Right. Mm-hmm. Your mind's too small. That's fine. I'll go ahead and give you very small definitions. So Rich says, awesome point. First of all, thank you. And of course, colorblindness is another spectrum. Yeah, I like to think of it like this, because if you go, well, the colors we know, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, Roy G. Biv, right? Everybody remember that? Okay, never mind. Anyway, all those colors there, they make up the visible spectrum. But visible to whom? Is there an ideal human? Is there an ideal I? No, this is a mélange. Ooh, that was sort of fun. Can I say it again? Mélange of all humans out there. So if the visible spectrum comes from... Hey, I'm having fun. If the visible spectrum comes from all humans, why would gender not come from all humans? Why would our experience why would the experience of all humans not be considered valid? So
I'm having a feeling, as you're saying this,
soapbox.
that with time, and I don't know what that means with time, but in due time, they will start to recognize, meaning society, will start to recognize gender as a spectrum. Just the way they have with like autism, just the way they have with all kinds of stuff. And I'm not trying to put transgender as a disorder or anything like that, because maybe even autism isn't a disorder either. Maybe it's just a human experience that specifically vibrating individual human is having an experience of.
Right.
Either way, that vibration, that frequency, it's a spectrum, and everything is a spectrum.
Yeah. Yes. Agreed.
Okay. If we're okay to go maybe like 15 minutes, because I feel like it might open a can of worms. I don't know.
You want to throw it out, and then we'll decide whether or not we should attack it next week? What were you going to say?
Sure, yeah, throw it out and we'll see what we can do with it.
Because Lino, you just reminded me by saying that and talking about autism and stuff as well, because people often view autism and ADHD in particular as neurotypes and not, mental disorders or anything like that.
But it's still in the DSM, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders.
Mental disorders, yep.
So is transgender.
Gender dysphoria. Yeah. Gender identity disorder has been taken out. But anyway, moving on. Sorry. Go. Yeah.
But I wonder... Is Amethysta, you called me out on this before, and my brain is not shutting up. It's like, because my way of approaching that and going, it's a label that encompasses a certain amount of, symptoms, yada, yada, go into that. People will approach me with that same kind of thinking and use examples like, as a kid, I wanted to be a dinosaur and I wore a bloody dinosaur costume. That doesn't mean I'm a dinosaur. I wonder what we'd have to say about that, because I obviously understand that level of thinking because I apply that level of thinking to other things. So when someone comes to me with that and asks me, is transgender somehow different than that? I don't know what to say. If I identify with a certain number of things under autism and I haven't got a specific diagnosis, whatever, does that mean I'm autistic? It might not. But is that kind of the same thing? Can the same level of thinking be applied to transgender as well?
This is a question for me. Is this because
this is a question for the ether. Someone
go ahead, Amethysta.
Because there are some things that we define. And I mean, I brought up the point about, if we say red and blue, like red, physicists define some range of wavelengths. And we can say, okay, this is red. Not because everybody sees it as, red's a bad example. Blue is a better one because some people see many wavelengths of blue, like about half of what's defined as blue, they consider it green. And some of that is social even. It's not even, I don't know if it's necessarily like regional, genetic type thing. I don't know. But moving past that, those are definitions. But just because they're definitions doesn't mean that we necessarily apply them all the same way. When you say, because people have said the same. Well, hey, look, I identify as an attack helicopter. Well, an attack helicopter, there are definitions that you don't have an overlap. Like if you were to say, well, a dinosaur, because I mean, we'll go back to yours, a dinosaur. There was a definition for a dinosaur. And it had to do with certain, species. There's a taxonomy that says, okay, well,
Was it dinosaur or dinosaurism? I'm just kidding.
We must eradicate dinosaurism from public life.
Beautifully done. That was really, really well done. So I guess what I'm saying, there are some things we can make a definition for, and then some things we cannot. Because I mean, I could give you a definition for gender, but the definition has to do with your individual experience. Having to do with your genetics, your biochemistry, your physicality, your social environment, which
Can I please give a better example? Just for a sec, because
Sure.
I just thought of a better one.
Okay,
Someone
go.
said, just because my son will want to play with dolls doesn't mean that they're transgender. That's probably a better example.
Sure. Oh, sure. Well, I mean, I think that's a good one. So I guess my point is like, what defines a gender? Is a gender defined by playing with dolls? I mean, I guess we could debate that forever. Is a dinosaur defined by something that specific? And the quick answer is yes. I mean, that's how we end up with a taxonomy of species. That's how we end up with definitions for colors, having to do with frequencies of light, trying to come up with other stuff, definition of sex. But, there are certain things that are not, I mean, and I'm going to go, oh gosh, who was it? I'm trying to think of the philosopher now. I'm not going to come up with it. It does make a difference. What is a defining characteristic? Like what would you say creates a definition? And a definition, I even said it earlier on, that a definition has to be exclusive, because you don't want it to be too exclusive, because then your definition means crap, and this is not a good definition. But the definition of dinosaur includes something with scales, something with, there's a whole taxonomy. I didn't do that.
That one's quite
Sorry.
easy.
But so that's my point. If there is a definition that is crisp, to use the the aerospace term for that, but if it's a crisp definition, then it excludes something. If I can look at an attack helicopter and say, well, this is something that runs on gasoline or whatever, diesel fuel, who knows, airline fuel. It's got a rotator above it. Attack means that it has like attack things. What the hell is an attack thing? Like guns and...
This is the whole reason they're taking it back to sex and basically just ignoring gender's existence entirely, because it doesn't exclude anything.
Right.
Sex doesn't even exclude the whole time.
I mean, sex has a crisp definition, but it's one that doesn't even apply to the individual, which is why it's so abstract to us. It's why we end up going, what the hell is sex? I don't even know. So in any event, I think that's my point. If you have something that can be crisply defined, you can say yes or no, you are included in this Venn diagram. This circle on a Venn diagram, whether or not there's overlap between you and dinosaurs.
It's easy to crisply identify something that no longer exists on this planet, especially if they don't have the language to stick up for themselves.
Well,
So I mean, or to speak about. I'm not. Yeah.
How about cats? We've got cats, but if there's like a taxonomy there's a biologist out there. I don't know where he or she was, but there was some biologist who was like, okay, I'm defining cat here, okay? Felis domesticus. This is what makes Felis domesticus. And there's a whole list of things.
Asshole. Oh, sorry to all you cats out there.
It doesn't include, urinating in a cat box. Which, there were people, people like, oh, kids in kindergarten, they're identifying as cats. And so they need to pee in a cat box instead of going to the restroom. And it's like, that's not a defining characteristic of a cat. I mean, like, because ferrets will use a litter box, other things. Help me out.
Oh, my cat doesn't even shit in the box, so no.
See, not a defining characteristic.
Created the box for them.
So... Anyway, I think that's where I would go with this. When if somebody says, because I've had this, people will come into a live stream or something and, well, what if I identify as a black woman? Well, okay, I'm looking at you and you're a white man. I love that you want to identify as this and go at it. If that is the identity you feel, I can't invalidate that because that's what you're telling me you experience. Looking at you, though, I can see that you don't have high levels of melanin in your skin. And I can, we can go through all the characteristics of a woman, right? Even if we were just to go with reproductive parts, let's do that. You do not fit, some of this definition. So anyway, there are some things that are crisply definable, some things that are not.
Yeah. Right. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking, well, what about if, people that are born with like 6 fingers and 6 toes and the human has 5, like all of a sudden you're just not a human.
Right. Well, it's not a defining characteristic to have 5.
Right.
But then when you think about it, I mean, because here's a question too. Because now I was going to say, well, what defines Homo sapiens? I mean, is it a genome? Because we share a lot of the genome. We share a lot of our genome with Neanderthalensis as well, Homo neanderthalensis. And interestingly, here we go. You'll love this. I believe we share about 92% of our genome with cats. So take that. Something like that. It was like 92 or 94%. I forget exactly. But we share because we're mammals. And so much of our we're both mammals. And I think we have less in common with reptiles. I don't know how much, but a lot of the genome is shared. So like what actually even defines some of these? Now I'm destroying my own point.
Oh my goodness.
I know, right? See, I should have stopped when I was
Well, Rich is loving this discussion.
Which is good.
We're
Yeah.
doing something right.
Fortunately, we can also buy cheap viewers, apparently. So that's cool. I'm glad that somebody put that in the chat. Soggy Platform has said on Twitch,
Oh.
we can get cheap viewers.
Oh, okay. Right.
I don't know if that means, I was kind of wondering, like, do you remember the, what were those things called, Lino? That it was like 3D things, Viewmasters? Was that what it was called? Do you remember?
The ones that have the little camera, the little like
Yeah, the
camera
disc
thing
you put in there.
of it,
Yes.
and just like I forgot what those are called. Yeah,
I
those
think
are cool.
Viewmaster, I think it was called. Something like that.
Maybe
That was the first thing I thought. I saw that and I was like, cool, I'd love a Viewmaster again. It's been so long since I had one of those, and I can see the Eiffel Tower in 3D, right?
Yeah, right.
With a stereo.
I know. I saw Graceland the other day.
Right. Stereoscopes. Those are fun too. Oh gosh, who was it? My grandmother, I think, had that my father had inherited. Do you know what a stereoscope is? No?
Not really.
Okay. So it was a thing you stuck up on your face, and then you put a little card on there, and it was exactly like a Viewmaster, I think it was called, but it was on a card that was probably this big. So that's I don't know, 7 centimeters by like 12 to 15. Who knows? Those of you playing the home game, it was like 6 inches by 3 inches maybe. And anyway, you put the thing on this little rail, and you had lenses, and then you stuck it on your face and looked at it, and you would see it in 3D. Stereoscopes, it was like those mind's eye things, only you didn't have to do this, right, to make your eyes work.
Where are we going at? Where are we going with this?
Nowhere whatsoever. Right. Just that there was somebody. Oh, Rich says Viewmaster. Cheap viewers on viewframe.online. The point is, I assume what's happening here is that you're going to be able to go and get a stereoscope, a Viewmaster, and you're going to look at the Eiffel Tower in 3D.
All right.
And that's pretty sweet. Should we have cut this short? Maybe we should have cut it short.
What does this have to do with anything? I'm so confused.
Not a thing. There was just a thing there was a comment in the chat.
Jesus creepers.
All right. Well, I have a poem here.
Did you?
Okay, well, let's move on to a poem.
It's about Viewmasters. Oh, Eiffel Tower, how lovely thine 3D image doth pop out at me.
Oh my gosh.
All right, I'm sorry. I'll mute.
That was hilarious, Lino.
So this poem is called "Let's Not Fret." For it's beyond our reach, but not beyond our teach. And if we keep climbing towards new heights, we will shine much brighter than any other lights. And it's up to us to take a stand for oneself rather than to sit quietly collecting dust on a shelf. It's time now. Today we take a bow and reintroduce our energy and not our enemy. Let's not fret. Remember, this is all for love. Do not forget.
Oh my gosh. So amazing.
Yeah.
Beautiful reminder.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
Should we have closing comments then on transmedicalism and whether everybody's valid out there?
Sure,
We
let's
want
do
to
it.
do summaries, right?
Let's do it.
I mean, what have we covered? We've covered the definition of transmedicalism and gender dysphoria as depicted in the DSM-5. We've acknowledged that the DSM-5 criteria for gender dysphoria is super broad and doesn't really exclude in the way that a crisp definition would. What else? How else would we summarize?
Oh, dang, I didn't know there was going to be a test. Well, I mean,
I think that's great.
yeah, I mean, I might
I
run
feel
with
like we
that.
covered a lot more than that, didn't we?
But, well, I think we talked about, like, how valid, what makes an identity valid. I think that's
Yeah.
a big point.
Yeah, and gender, whether it's a social construct, we can even get deeper into gender, whether it's a social construct or where it comes from. We can brainstorm a little bit more about this. Because as you were talking about that, I was just thinking, like, was gender this much of a big deal thousands of years ago? I think it had to be because there were hunters and gatherers. And so
Yeah.
it was like it was more of a gender norm where the women, are going to be gathering and the men are going to be hunting. And so I'm wondering if it kind of just stems from there
Now I'm
and
going to
just kept
challenge
going
that.
from there.
I'm
Yeah,
going to
we
challenge
don't.
that. Valkyries?
Oh,
What were the Valkyries? Who were the shield maidens? I mean, so Valkyries were dead shield maidens, but in Norse literature, right? You had women who went out and did battle. That was not necessarily a masculine pursuit.
Well, we're talking about battle now. I'm talking about like cavemen. I'm talking about even further behind. I mean, yeah, you can talk about, um, I mean, if you're talking about battle, there's all kinds of, women that fought as men and all
Yeah,
kinds of even the
right.
Civil War. I mean, throughout history,
Right, right.
but when you were talking about like the origin and we were bringing up the origin of how these roles actually first began, I'm feeling that perhaps it began when men were and women were gathering, men were hunting, and it really became a symbol of strength. And if we needed women to stay home to give birth and feed their babies and cook while the men were out doing the harder work. So, and perhaps maybe it stemmed from there. And I mean, I'm sure that it kept going and evolving, and somehow it keeps going back and forth. And that's the one thing about evolution, that things are always going to go back and forth before it starts stepping up into something else. So we're always going to teeter-totter.
You used the word
But
strength.
we can talk about this next time as well.
Yeah, we should. Just super briefly, you used the word strength, and I bet you that's more what defined what somebody did. Because there are.
Well, I'm referring to strength for as if we were talking about cavemen, women, and I'm talking about physical strength, the way things were meant to be. Yeah, because for sure. I mean, men are stronger than women. I mean, I'm not saying that is. That I'm saying that it is, and I can tell you that I can arm wrestle more stronger now as a man on testosterone than I could as a woman.
Oh, of course.
That's even coming from my own physical experience in even transitioning. I'm way stronger now as a man than I was a woman.
Sure. Oh, and I'm way weaker now as a woman than I was a man.
Right, and so because of these characters, the strength doesn't make somebody weaker just because they're weaker, and now because then people put emotions to it. This is detaching from emotion.
Yeah. No, and what I was trying to say was that physical strength depends upon genetics and biochemistry.
You know what?
Not a social role.
This is part of the conversation about diving into the origins of gender. Can we write this down?
Yeah, we should. Write it down.
Remind us.
I think this would be a great discussion for next time.
Yeah. We'll do it. So
because again, it's not a crisp definition. It's
right.
Like there's plenty of bloody cis women that I'm going to say probably vast majority that could friggin' beat me into the ground if they wanted to. Because my
Right.
genetics, I'm very weak. I
Right.
was even with testosterone. But
I'm gonna go along with you on that. All right, well, let's shut this one down and we'll talk about it next week.
okay,
Does
sounds
anybody-
like a
Thank you,
plan.
everyone.
Who wants to do the? You want me to do the outro since I got it up?
Oh my gosh, I want to do it.
All right, go do it.
Okay, you know
All right.
what?
Do you want me to kill some time?
No, I'm good.
So we love all. Oh, are you ready? Oh, I was just gonna kill a couple songs.
Obviously, we can talk about this for hours, and I would love to personally. I'm having one of those days where I'm like just sitting and chatting with friends about this for hours. I'm here for it.
Yes.
But we'll pick it up next week. And if you have any requests for future topics, please let us know. Like pop it into the chat box. We've got an email address in our YouTube description as well. Let us know, and we can get to that in a future episode. And thank you for joining the conversation. What we stand for on this podcast, harmony and humanity, and bridging the divide between all the different subsets of people and recognizing our shared humanity. I want to acknowledge you for wanting to dive into that with us. And we think you're pretty cool for doing that as well, for focusing on that shared humanity. So with that, we will see you all next week. We're sending you lots of love. And
Yes.
we'll dive into this next week. Bye,
Absolutely.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Definitely thank you to Zoe and to Rich and the other three
Yeah.
people that I see are certainly viewing right now. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye, Jasmine. Bye, Lino.
Goodbye.
See ya.